Hello, everyone. My name is Alan. I'm a fifth year aerospace engineering student from American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, UNSW branch. Welcome to our first installment of the 2022 AIAA Speaker Series podcast. Today's special guests are Emily Spencer and Josh Chevin from Nova Systems, an Australian-owned engineering company. Just starting off with a bit of housekeeping, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting or webinar. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and recognize and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. And that's pretty much it for housekeeping. So welcome, Emily and Josh. Could you please introduce yourselves and what you do to our viewers?
Sure, I'll go first. So hi, my name's Emily. I'm a mechanical and aerospace engineer. I studied at the University of Adelaide and I did my honours in 2020. So I've been working in industry for a year and a bit now. I started at Nova Systems early 2021, where I've been working as a systems engineer in the graduate rotation program.
And you, Josh?
Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Chevin. I studied aerospace engineering and materials science at Monash University and then have spent the last 2 years with Nova Systems in a variety of roles, from the transportation sector in systems engineering to the civil aviation sector now as a design engineer with our design office.
Awesome. And just for everyone who's new to uni and maybe not so familiar with the engineering companies, what is Nova Systems? What is Nova Systems and what do they do? If either of you want to answer.
Yeah, I can take this one. So Nova Systems is an engineering services and technology solutions company. So we're 100% Australian owned, sovereign, and we do a lot of work in the aerospace and defence sectors. So it's been around for around 20 years now. So yeah, it's growing quite fast, but yeah, it's a pretty cool company. Not sure if I missed anything there, Josh.
No, that was kind of the basics. The company cut its teeth on test and evaluation for the Defence Force, and then slowly started to grow into other markets and other capabilities. So now it provides solutions for large acquisition projects for both the civil and defence markets.
Awesome to hear. Well, I guess we'll get into it. So starting at a university level with you guys, just so the viewers get to know you a bit better, what made you guys decide to study aerospace engineering over other engineering fields? Starting with you, Josh.
That's a fascinating question, and I will try not to take too long to explain the answer behind that one. I had been fascinated by aircraft since I can never remember. My mother worked she had a pilot's license, was an air traffic controller. So I'd been surrounded by aviation for a while. But something really took me towards aviation, and that was actually a documentary about how they made the A380. So watching the entire process about how they did the design work, how they did the testing and all of the challenges they faced, I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do. So I actually didn't have, it's a bit embarrassing to admit, the strongest grasp on what aerospace engineering encompassed. And I know that can be a bit of an issue for a lot of people. It's really hard to get a definition from somebody. What is aerospace engineering? What do you do as an aerospace engineer? Because it's such a broad topic. But that's what initially drove me towards aerospace engineering at university.
Very interesting. I think I can relate to that a bit because I think for me it was just at some point in my high school life I was just like, I really like planes, and building things and seeing how things work is really cool. So combine the two, you get aerospace, right? So yeah. So and what about you, Emily?
Yeah, so I don't want to copy Josh's story too much, but it starts pretty similarly, where I always had an interest in airplanes, and whenever we went traveling, Dad worked in defence at the time, so we moved around a lot and moved between different states. So we did fly quite more than the average family did, and I just was always blown away, like for as long as I can remember, just the fact that these man-made things can make us fly. It's incredible to me even now. So I knew that I wanted to work with airplanes and aircraft. I wasn't sure really what that looked like until year 12, so towards the end of high school, where I was encouraged to do all these STEM subjects, but I didn't really have too much of a plan. Kind of fell into engineering. It seemed to make sense. My dad was an engineer, and it looked pretty cool. I didn't really understand what engineering was, as I'm sure most people don't when they're going through the SATAC guide and they're like, oh, I don't really feel like being a lawyer or a doctor, so I'll be an engineer. Don't know what it means, but it looks cool. So that was me as well. So I actually, there was a course at Adelaide Uni called Flexible Year Entry, which meant that you did more introductory subjects for a year until you decided in which discipline you wanted to go into. And I went into it being like, look, I kind of know I want to do aerospace, but well, you know, I'm a bit indecisive really. So I just did that year anyway. And I just came full circle and decided to stick to aerospace. So yeah, haven't looked back since. It's a really cool degree and it can take you to a lot of cool places. So yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah, and just a follow-up question for Josh, actually. Yeah, so you mentioned that you do material science as well. Was that something that you always planned to do as well alongside, or was that just something that popped up on the side?
That's a fantastic question. If I come clean, I picked my degree and I picked wanting to study at Monash without even having visited the campus. So for me, I had done what they recommend most people don't, which is I had pigeonholed myself and I said, that's what I'm doing. I'm working towards that. And then I did everything humanly possible to do it. I actually didn't start studying material science initially. I was actually doing computational science. And it was when I realized that I really prefer working with my hands. And I had a fair bit of experience with UAVs and a bit of UAV research. And I just found that materials worked better for me. So I made a switch. Added a little bit of extra time to the degree, but well worth it, because for me, it was all about what intuitively made sense for me. I could draw a lot more from around me than I could from what was quite a maths heavy computational science major as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting actually, because my second degree is also material science along with aerospace. So yeah, I just found it really interesting that someone else is also doing this. Someone else did the same degree as me, like degree path as me, I guess. So
yeah, the material science degree that I did was very traditional, very steel and metal heavy, as opposed to what you'd want to see at the moment, which is a lot more of a focus on composite materials and emerging materials. So I encourage people to look a little further into their majors and to see what some of the specialist subjects look like as well. Otherwise, you may find yourself a fantastic sword maker, but nothing more.
Yeah, I think they're currently teaching a lot about polymers and composites and all those newer materials, which is really cool. You also do get the steel and ceramics and all the classical stuff, but it's a good mix. Anyways, moving on. So what experience taught you guys the most at uni? And like what carried through into your professional life, I guess. We can start with Emily for this one.
So I think one of the experiences that helped me the most at like from uni into the workplace wasn't really technical for me. It was more just like kind of people skills and teamwork skills. I picked up a lot of that sort of stuff up. So when I was at uni, I was involved with a lot of different societies and clubs and worked with a lot of teams on projects. And I think just learning how to kind of work in a team effectively and communicate with other people is the biggest thing, right? Because no matter what engineering consultancy you end up with, you're not going to be working by yourself in a little room. You're going to be dealing with people a lot, whether it's the people you work with or other consultants. So yeah, it's that's probably the biggest thing I took. Technical wise, I think systems engineering has definitely come into play. I remember learning about it at uni and kind of I enjoyed it, but I thought it was a little bit fluffy, to be honest with you, like a lot of diagrams and yeah, sure, okay, whatever. But then you actually go into industry and you're like, oh, this is real life and it's super important. Everyone does it. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock to the system, but yeah, was definitely very happy that I paid attention in my systems eng courses for that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm currently doing systems engineering this semester, so I'll make sure to pay attention.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
I had a very fascinating time at university because I am not your typical student. I don't. I had to work really hard to get even average grades, and I admit that academically I wasn't flash. I wasn't fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. But for me, what added the most value wasn't even the degree itself. It was getting involved in the extracurricular engineering teams. So from first year through to the last year I was at university, I was involved in the Monash unmanned aerial or uncrewed aerial systems, as they're now known as. And that gave me exposure to pretty much every skill I use on a daily basis, from, as Emily mentioned, the soft skills. So I worked on small projects, I worked on big projects. I had management roles, I was the team leader at one point. So I, before even reaching the workplace, had failed, made mistakes, succeeded, all spectrum of experiences within the student team in a relatively safe space, and gave me a lot of experience to carry forward into the workplace. And then there was the fact that it was a fantastic motivator to use the skills that we were learning in the degree outside of the degree. And the research teams and the UAV team were actually what gave me all the opportunities that led to me working for Nova in the end. So I can't stress enough just how important it is to branch out and to look for experiences beyond the core degree, because it's a prime means of differentiating yourself.
Really good advice. Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we'll get into a bit more with the industry now. So for the two of you, how's your engineering career been like so far? Yeah. I guess we can continue with you, Josh.
So my career has been relatively varied so far. So a major career aspiration of mine is to be a flight test engineer. That's been the dream since I was 15. And that still remains the dream today. But of course, one's path is never linear in a career. So I started working for the university whilst I was studying in a small consultancy that worked in the heavy haul rail sector. So nothing to do with aircraft, nothing to do with aerospace, an awful lot of steel. But I managed to gather some really important experiences around working in engineering teams, working on design projects, a lot of skill that I was able to carry forward to my time at Nova, where I started off in the heavy haul rail team. So I didn't even start off with aircraft, but it was the foot in the door. And then I started working in the digital engineering team. So I did a rotation with transport, rotation with digital engineering, looking at new ways of improving the systems engineering process. And then very recently, I took an expression of interest to join the design office, which is how I ended up where I am now in civil aviation. So very wayward, very linear, and not initially actually having anything to do with aerospace.
Was Nova Systems a company that you had in mind when you were, I guess, before you, when you were doing your rail?
Absolutely. So I had been in touch with Nova Systems a good 3 years before I was offered a position. I stumbled across them at Avalon Air Show in about 2014, 2015. And when I saw flight test engineering written on their banner, I was like, yes, you are the people I'm going to work with. And I started to do everything I could to forge some sort of connection. And initially that was through some alumni that were working for Nova then. And then it actually was through a chance opportunity to pursue some extracurricular projects. So I looked to try and tailor my final year project with Nova and explored that with the graduate manager. And then when it came time to apply for the graduate program, it was a relatively seamless process because all the people that I'd spoken to before were people that I could then draw upon to say, hey, would you, what opportunities are there? They were able to answer a lot of questions for me before it even stepped in the door.
That's a really solid pathway, it seems. Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, and I'm not going to lie, there's no way I could have seen how it all panned out. And at times it felt like I was getting nowhere. So, reaching out to companies, not just Nova, but reaching out to many companies, getting next to no responses, and getting offers back that were nowhere near what I was expecting. It takes a lot more perseverance than I thought it would to end up where I am.
Yeah, I think the harsh environment of internship applying is something that all uni students do experience at some point. So yeah, I think everyone
Absolutely.
can relate.
Absolutely.
Yes. So moving on to you now, Emily. So how's your engineering career been like?
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far. So yeah, as I said before, so I'm part of the Nova Systems graduate program. So this is a rotation-based program. So you spend kind of between 12 and 6 months in a certain rotation, and then you go to a different part of the company. So that's actually been a really awesome structure because it's shown me different parts of the company and has shown me different opportunities that I probably wouldn't have necessarily known about if I had just gone straight into more aerospace related work straight up. So that's been really good. So similar to Josh, I have done a rotation in digital engineering, and I was working on some flight simulator training devices, and we were using digital engineering to create better processes for qualification. With flight simulators, there are a lot of different requirements that you have to keep in mind and keep track of and ensure there's compliance against them. So we were looking into ways of making that a little bit more with the times and a bit easier to manage. So that was very interesting. I wasn't from a huge software background, so there were some learning curves, but it was never too steep. I always felt like it was definitely manageable, and I had a lot of support from people. So that was really interesting. And just being able to see a side of aerospace I wouldn't have otherwise, like flight simulated training devices. There's a lot of work that goes into those to make them compliant for clients such as defense to use. So yeah, I actually found that really interesting. I've just rotated out of that now as of the start of this year, and I'm moving into a new project where I'm providing support for the P8s, which are a type of military aircraft. So yeah, that's at the moment I haven't done any technical work yet, but that looks pretty interesting. I believe I'll be working with training systems there as well. But once again, that's going to show me a different side to aerospace, probably one that's more defense related. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Just touching on one of the comments that you made. So do you think that coding and programming, that type of language and skills, is something that's important in every sort of engineering role, or is it something that some people can afford to skip out on in uni?
So, okay, so I'll just start by saying I think that understanding software is super important. So for me, I haven't had to understand too much programming at university. I think this is something that they're, even since I left uni, they're starting to improve on, and they're seeing the value in actually investing in that. And students are learning how to program in their engineering degrees. This is something that I didn't really have. A lot of my coding knowledge was sort of self-taught because we started getting assignments in final year that were, solve this operation, like this order of operations for this aircraft stability. And it was like, what's going on? I better learn how to code. So yeah, I haven't used it too much yet at Nova. There have been people in my team who have, though, and I definitely think that if I had more programming experience, it would have helped me become more fluent and maybe more comfortable in my role quicker. But I think just seeing the work that people are doing around me and the work that my friends are doing at other companies as well, like everything's moving in that direction, right? So at uni, you have such a great opportunity to just learn programming and learn all these skills that a lot of people in industry don't quite have yet. Like it's not as much of a big skill as it was for engineers who are maybe a bit older. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely would encourage people to learn programming, even though I didn't necessarily take that advice. I think, yeah, it's super important to know.
Awesome. All right. So next question is, For the two of you, what's been the most rewarding part of your work, either at Nova Systems or anywhere else in your professional life? Yeah, I guess you can start again, Emily.
Sure. So I think something that's been quite rewarding is just feeling like you're kind of giving back to the industry, and that you've been a 4 or 5 year investment at uni, and now you can actually kind of go out there and put your skills on show and like deliver things that people will find really helpful. I think just there's a lot of self-fulfillment in starting to work in industry as well. So a lot of the things you learn at uni, you learn on paper or you can learn through labs, but until you actually start applying it in a workplace, does it really start to click? And that's been really valuable for me, particularly for systems engineering in my instance. So yeah, I think that's been the most rewarding for me. I think the opportunity as well to get involved in extracurricular things outside of uni. So I'm on the Young Engineers Australia committee, and we, run a lot of events. We do a lot of outreach things. So being able to be a part of that as an engineer versus a student, where I have potentially more influence and more understanding of how industry works, I think that's been really rewarding for me.
Yeah, sounds really fun. And what about you, Josh?
So it's very difficult to distinguish between a few. I've had a few very early on when I was working at the university in the heavy haul rail sector. I was given the opportunity to own an entire project. So the opportunity to develop it was a prototype generator for one of the big iron ore miners, because an issue they had was that they didn't have any power along their trains. And what was initially given to me as oh, this will keep you busy, see what you can do with this. 2 years later, we were in the Pilbara and I watched the train depart towards the mine with my generator on it on the side. And there is something very satisfying about that process because when you're engineers are here to solve problems. And, we hadn't finished, but that was a very important milestone. I'm very deliverable focused. So the same thing can be applied to my present role. Very recently for one of the providers of an air ambulance service in Australia needed new straps for their stretcher harnesses. So I was told, all right, Josh, you're it. That's you're the first cab off the rank, off you go. So did everything, went to suppliers, looked at the drawings, got the parts, approved everything, conformed everything, got it all stamped and sent out, and handing that parcel off to the courier to say, right, take this to that company, and then knowing that that's going on a helicopter and that will go and save someone's life, or they'll be going to use on a daily basis. Very, very satisfying. Not all the things that we do are going to be that higher altruistic, but knowing that you've helped somebody do what they're wanting to do, for me, is really important.
Yeah. Well, I guess you still have a bit more to go if you want to get that flight test engineer role. I think that probably will be the highlight. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot still to do, and like every role, there are highs and there are lows, and it's about, for me, 90% of the enjoyment I've derived from my work, aside from delivering solutions, has been the people I work with. For me, it's really about arriving at the solution and who I arrive at the solution with.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So continuing with you, Josh, how's your second degree helped you in your career, if it has at all?
Oh, it has, for a variety of reasons. In a somewhat ironic way, my degrees have meant a lot more than just the knowledge that they imparted on me. Some of it was the methodology and the ethos behind being an engineer, being a lot more scientific and a lot more calculated in the way we do things. My second degree has really helped me because it's given me a strong appreciation for I mentioned it was in material science, the limitations of the materials that we work with. And working in different industries, you start to understand that different industries have different thresholds on what they do. So I went from the heavy haul industry where they'd look at something and go, well, I'm sorry, Josh, that doesn't look strong enough. More steel, please. To the aerospace industry where they're saying 20 grams extra, don't think that's going to cut it. So it's given me a lot of breadth and a lot of understanding that, the same part used in very different contexts will have very, really different requirements. And it's circling back to systems engineering. You need to know how to communicate. It's taught me how to ask questions and ask the right questions to make sure that I don't waste my time and I don't waste the time of the client that I'm working with.
Something I don't think I expected out of a material science degree, but
Well, again, I want to tell you that when I signed up for material science and aerospace engineering, that I was taught material science and aerospace engineering, but there was a step change in how I communicate and how I work with people and how to not just design something, but to design a solution.
Yeah. Oof, the engineering mindset. And for you, Emily, did you have it always lined up that you were going to work in some sort of defense capacity, or was that something that just happened as, with life?
Yeah, so the answer to that question is no. I was never lining up defense in particular. It came across my radar in my final year of uni when everyone was starting to kind of look for jobs. I'd previously worked, I'd done my work experience at an oil and gas company, and that working in the energy space was quite interesting to me, but I wanted to try something a bit different because I think right now in this stage in your early career, it's like the best time to start trying new things, right? So one of my friends told me that Nova was hiring. I'd seen them around at like career fairs at uni and things like that. And I knew that they did some aerospace stuff. In Adelaide at the time, there wasn't a lot of that. We do have the Space Centre being built, but a lot of that was kind of smaller companies and startups, not quite, a little bit more, I don't want to say the word exclusive, but it was a little bit harder to kind of get into those spaces. So I thought Nova looked really good. I tried applying for some other places as well that were a bit different. I applied for Boeing at one point. Didn't get in, but that's okay because Nova's really good. And there was a wind turbine company in New Zealand, which I was really interested in as well. At the end of uni, I started finding that I was growing a passion for sustainability and environmental engineering. So I thought I'd give that a try. No dice. So I went with Nova. They were defense and aerospace. I thought, look, I know that I like aerospace. Defense, have not really had much experience with them before. So let's just give it a shot and see how we go. And from that, I've been able to learn a lot from it. I still get to work with in the aerospace industry at some capacity, but also working on that defense side as well. So yeah, it's not something that I was always lining up to do, maybe subconsciously because my family has a defense history, so specifically my dad, so maybe it was kind of always ingrained, but just kind of came out of nowhere. So that's cool. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I've heard a lot about people saying that they never imagined where they end up in their careers when they start uni. So I guess that holds true to many people. So moving up a bit. So do you guys have like a really high career goal that I guess that's maybe a bit ambitious, or are your goals more grounded in, I guess, reality?
I might jump in here because I'm notorious for setting very lofty goals. And this is what taught me a fantastic lesson in flexibility. I, at the age of 15, had created a 50-year Gantt chart for where I wanted to be and for what I wanted to do. I can confirm I haven't stuck to it. Things took a little longer than I expected. And my understanding of how the industry works and how things actually work in the workplace has changed a fair bit. So a very lofty goal for me is I would love to be a flight test engineer on a major civil aerospace project. So, one of the big primes manufacturing aircraft, it would be fantastic to be one of the people on the first flight of an aircraft type. That would be absolutely amazing. But that is a very specific goal. And I slowly over the years have realized that I actually have some guiding principles. I don't need to achieve that to feel like I've achieved something. And for me, I want to make sure that whatever I do has a meaningful and tangible impact. And as long as I keep fulfilling that on a daily, monthly, annual basis, then I don't know if it's really a problem where I end up after that. And I think that I can still do that with Nova. It doesn't have to, I don't have to be with Airbus. I don't have to be with Boeing at the front seat of an aircraft to make a difference.
Yeah. Oh man, I get a 50-year Gantt chart. I've never heard of something.
I've got to
that long.
stop taking it so philosophical as well. I always do this. I have had plans, and for example, I did my degree was supposed to take 5 years. It actually took 7. I think it's really important to be flexible with your plans and to be kind to yourself when you don't necessarily stick to them, because there are some realities in life that we have to adhere to. But if we don't aim high, then we'll never get further than our front door.
Oh. Just out of curiosity, how far into that 50-year Gantt chart are you actually currently?
Well, I'm 27, so that would put me at 12 years into the Gantt chart, which is not quite where I thought I would be. But I have also amazed myself with how my perspectives and my attitudes have changed over that time as well. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It took me a while to become comfortable with it. But there's certainly nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we can move on to you, Emily.
Yeah. So I think I have a similar mindset to Josh. I don't think I've made a Gantt chart for more than like 2 weeks in advance, though, so a bit different there. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have like, I don't want to, I don't have like the goal of being like a CEO or like the chair of a board or something like that. I don't really have like a really big out there goal. I think similar to Josh, as long as I feel like I'm achieving something and like producing like positive impact on the world, I think that's something that I'm trying to work towards. I think that's starting to look more like incorporating sustainability and helping the world get to net zero and get to a post-carbon world. And I think as engineers, it's our opportunity, but it's also somewhat our responsibility. So because we kind of put us in a situation. So I won't get too far into that, but I think I'm excited about the role of engineering in delivering us into that world. And I think as long as I can contribute to that and keep working in that, trying to incorporate that into whatever engineering discipline I'm in, because everyone needs to adapt and kind of have this mindset now. So yeah, I think as long as I can do that, I will be pretty happy. And I think that would be my goal. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I think engineering, sustainable engineering was actually one of my degrees that I thought about choosing. Didn't end up going with it because I was just like, there's a lot of electrical engineering stuff that I have to do here, and I don't know if I want to do that. But yeah, I still hold a lot of environmental values pretty close, so that's also something that I do want to incorporate into whatever my future roles will be. But I guess something along the similar lines. So what values do you guys hold closely as engineers?
It's very important for me to hold a very high level of integrity, and because as engineers we make a lot of decisions, and it can often be very difficult at the time to see the impact of the decisions you make. And we've seen examples in recent times where engineers in particular have made poor decisions, and that's had ramifications that's either caused substantial financial loss or even more severely the loss of life. So it's important to me to take the work I do seriously, but also to make sure that, if you work with me, you'll know that I'm not afraid to speak up if I need to, or if I disagree with something. And I somewhat hold a higher obligation to engineering than I do to finance. I probably wouldn't make a fantastic project manager at the moment because I'd probably always be over budget. But it's very important to me to make sure that we consider the impact of everything that we're doing and we make the best decision with the information available at the time.
Do you have anything to add to that, Emily?
Yeah, I think something that's really important as engineers is just to be able to listen to people and listen to clients. And because at the end of the day, we're designing things for people, right? So just making sure that we're listening to listen and creating those things that people want in the first place. And, everyone knows engineers make assumptions, but, where do those assumptions stop and where do we, start not just kind of drawing conclusions from the air and actually knowing that this is what people want. And I think, I don't know, I just find that's a good kind of piece of advice for life, really. I think a lot of the time, everyone's super busy and we might not maybe fully listen to people when they speak or always give them a platform to speak their mind. So I think, I think as engineers, I think it's a really valuable skill, and it's something that I've really valued. Everyone that I've worked with so far at Nova has been exceptional at that. So I've been really lucky. And yet that has a direct impact on the quality of work that we're delivering as well. So yeah, I think a work culture that is really positive and good is also super important. I think it's a really great way to get you to work with other people in your company, and to become more comfortable with each other. Because if you're comfortable going out for a dinner or going for a run in the mornings, like, you're going to be comfortable like writing a report together or conflict management or anything like that. And once again, that just has a direct impact on A, the work you're doing, and B, your own mental health, which is something that can't be understated. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I guess piggybacking off your answer, what is the work culture like at Nova Systems? Because I'm sure everyone here would want to know.
So it's funny. So the social culture is one of the things that really kind of drew me to apply once my friend told me they were hiring. So it's honestly been fantastic. I can say that the people that I work with are more like friends rather than colleagues. And that has been through, doing kind of social things outside of work, or even within work, just like having a chat in the tea room, going to get coffees together, having a real culture of like mentorship and, just talking to each other and giving each other advice. Like, that's been really good. Nova hold pretty good social events as well. So that definitely ties into the culture, and yeah, just shows that the company is really investing in people's well-being and people's, feeding into that feeling of coming to work and being really excited to work with your friends, rather than feeling, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's just a 9 to 5. Like, it really changes that whole mindset. So yeah, Nova's work culture, definitely, it's fantastic and I've loved it. So yeah.
Yeah, and how have you found it, Josh?
Very similar. As a consulting firm, it's you have to be people oriented. So because Nova markets its consultants, so you'd be a very poor consulting company if you didn't treat them well. One of the things that stood out for me was I, for the first time ever, had come to the conclusion that I needed a mental health day. I needed to take a day to get my head in order. So I was a little hesitant to ask, because a lot of people are these days. It's difficult to know when and what to ask. But when I asked my manager, the response back wasn't yes. It was, do you need to take the day after as well? Take as long as you need. And I haven't felt supported at like I have at Nova anywhere else. So it's a bizarre feeling, but it's actually really comforting to know that there's an interest beyond the work I do. There's some interest and some care in who I am as a person as well.
Yeah, I think there's a very big stigma around mental health recently, but it's really good to see that Nova is looking out for you. Well, I guess moving on to a bit more, lighthearted stuff. So Josh, you're a mentor, or you have been a mentor for one of the other execs on AIAA. So, how important do you think mentoring is for both students and people in the industry?
Mentoring is crucial. It's akin to the closest thing we get to apprenticeships as engineers. Before, you used to, you'd be down in the workshop if you were actually making something, but now a lot of what we do is in an office, and mentoring has, in my mind, what's supplemented a lot of the really important life lessons as an engineer that you really ought to know. And I have come to realize that people don't stop being mentored either. People that mentor me have their own mentors, and it's almost a chain. I don't know who's at the top, I'll be honest. And I hope that whoever is at the top actually has solid advice. But I found it really important to have multiple mentors to get multiple perspectives, because at the end of the day, when we have to make decisions on things like our career, it's in our nature as engineers to want to be educated on all the options. And mentoring is a fantastic way of doing that. It can be both formal or informal, and a way to make sure that you know everything you need to know to make important life and career decisions.
Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of first years or new students listening to this. So would you have any suggestions of how they'd go about looking for mentors?
You can go through official mentoring programs. I know that the AIAA have a mentoring program for students and young professionals. A lot of universities have mentoring programs as well. It can also be relatively informal. A mentor can just be somebody that either you've worked with or are presently working with, or someone who just by being in their presence seems to educate you. So for me, a couple of lecturers at university, we never sat down, we're like, yeah, this is mentoring. But people that gave me important, that I would go to with questions and decisions about my academic life, really, really valuable to have. So I would caution people to don't put labels on it. You don't need to call something mentoring. It's more about listening and taking on advice and experiences from other people than anything else.
All right, awesome. Emily, so has mentoring played a part in your journey, I guess, as an engineer?
Not as much as it has for Josh. So when I was at uni, I didn't really do any mentoring or get into mentoring programs. I definitely had friends who did though. There was a few women in engineering mentoring programs as well, and they sounded fantastic. So I think, younger year students who are listening to this definitely get into mentoring, because I do wish that I did. I think now at Nova, there has been definitely mentorship opportunities, and that's been really good just to kind of help get my head straight and get a little bit more of okay, there's a million opportunities for me right now. This can be really overwhelming. But if I have a mentor there who I can just talk to, and they can kind of start to be like, okay, so you're interested in these things, you should try this. Or, sometimes not even prescribing anything at all, just kind of being there to talk to and help you kind of shape your own path. Definitely really valuable. I don't really know if you would call this mentoring, but I did do some like outreach events while I was at uni, and even at Nova now, where we start a bit younger, so we go to like high schools and primary schools, and teaching kids about STEM. We'll always say this. I think that's like the most important way to get people interested in STEM, is starting off young and seeing what cool opportunities are there and fostering that. So yeah, I think mentoring can take a lot of forms, like Josh was saying. Something cool that I don't do, but one of my friends does, and I've been meaning to copy her, is that whenever she goes to an Engineers Australia event or anything that has a speaker, if she really resonates with them, she just reaches out to them on LinkedIn and then is like, hey, do you want to go get a coffee? There's this one person she's been, getting a coffee with for quite consistently for a year now, and they just, like she's absorbed so much career knowledge from that, and it's been super casual. Once again, they don't necessarily call it mentoring, they just call it catch-ups, but she's gotten a lot from that. So yeah, I guess just get creative with how you get mentors as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you were part of Young Engineers, was it? Is that sort of, I guess, a program to help, I guess, young engineers like prosper or something? Or do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so the focus of YAA is to kind of support like kind of graduate engineers and early career engineers, and just kind of introduce to industry and kind of help build their professional development. So that's kind of the key focus. So we run a lot of events where it'll be like, you know, public speaking workshops or some more technical talks as well. We have some events where we just bring engineers together who, you know, work from different companies just to kind of get that exposure to what's going on. So yeah, so we definitely do provide support in that. I don't know if there's necessarily, there's some mentoring stuff. So we have some like coffee catch-ups where we'll have like 10 young engineers kind of paired with one person from industry. And then from that, they can just kind of have a bit of a mentoring relationship. But yeah, that's kind of what YAA does, is a bit of a brief thing. But yeah, definitely I found it, as someone who's been on the committee, like really helpful in the events we've done. Like people have definitely engaged them a lot. So yeah, I think that, yeah, I don't know, I'd recommend getting involved if there's anything going on at New South Wales, because yeah, it definitely has been helping me a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like heaps fun. And I guess I'll move on to a question that's probably on everyone's minds, which is internships and grad roles. So I guess pretty much one of the most asked questions is like, what's some general advice on landing one of these positions, or like what can people do to make themselves more appealing? I guess we could start with Josh for this one.
Yep. So just tallying it up in my head. So before I left university, I had gone through 4 different work experience or internship positions. Only one of those I actually formally applied for. The rest piggybacked off the first, because once you got to know one person, then suddenly you got to know another, and then you got to go know another. And I really do understand that first foot in the door, it can be incredibly tough. So what can help get you those can be those extracurricular activities that you do outside of your degree. So things like the focus is becoming less and less on core academics and more on, well, show me how you've got this passion for engineering. Demonstrate to me how or why you're different from your cohort. So when it comes to internship positions, I'd say 75% of it should really be spent focusing on getting to know the people in that business or that industry, and continuing to network after that, which is what leads on to the follow-on opportunities. But it can be very difficult to get those initial opportunities. Can completely understand that. It took me quite a while. So I actually started from within the university. So I looked at what opportunities were available, because a lot of lecturers and a lot of research groups have industry connections. So it's a fantastic place to start. You know, start on your home turf.
Yeah, and anything from you, Emily?
Definitely want to echo, yeah, Josh's point of extracurricular activities are really key. I found that as I started getting more involved in like social clubs on campus, and traveling as well. So I did the Project Everest Ventures program, where I went to Fiji twice, and we did some work kind of in the social enterprise space. So the work that I did wasn't really related to engineering, but it really did incorporate that aspect of teamwork and working with communities to create something. So that was really valuable, not just for my own professional development, but like it gave me something to talk about in interviews that was really different as well. So I think being able to draw on those experiences that are a bit out there, but if you can also talk about it so it sounds like it'll be relevant to your work, which it is, then definitely do that as well. But yeah, I found going to like careers fairs and stuff, really useful. Even when I was in first and second year, a lot of like graduate programs and internships, at least at Adelaide Uni, they don't really become available until you're like third or like penultimate or final year students essentially, but really valuable still going early on, because you can kind of get the awkwardness out of the way for your first two when it doesn't really matter, and learn, this is the scene, these are the people that are here, these are the questions to ask. Don't just go up and take the free Mentos and walk away, like actually engage with people and ask about their lives and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think that would be a big piece of advice I would give to younger year students.
Yeah, it's definitely taken me a bit too long to get into the networking scene. One of my biggest regrets, but it's better late than never. So yeah, and I guess one of the final questions to go with it is Nova Systems going to be offering any sort of positions that everyone can look out for in the coming year?
Yes, we will. Our graduate program has only ever taken on more and more people. So I think it's fair to say that you can continue to expect both work experience and graduate placement programs to be available. We convert a lot of our work experience students into graduates as well. Work experience is a fantastic way to, it's almost like a 3-month-long interview where you get to really demonstrate yourself a little more than what you would otherwise get in your standard 30-40 minute interview. And it's a fantastic way, again, to continue networking, because it's some part of your career that never stops. So Nova is investing heavily in careers and early professionals, because that's where the talent comes from.
And where can people find the applications for these roles?
What a great question. Emily, why don't you tell the folks all about it?
So it should be on the Nova Systems website. That's where I found it when I applied a year or so ago now. So yeah, I suppose like if you wanted us to like kind of distribute the link, or just like get people to jump onto our newly freshened up website and just go to the careers page and find the applications there, you should be able to do so. And I believe it's kind of standard that when we start kind of advertising when we start advertising like graduate program roles, we post that on LinkedIn as well. So just like keep an eye out on the socials, I suppose. I don't know if we've opened it yet, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it is usually around this time of year that we start hiring.
It is very early. So if you're final year, I would be looking now, which feels frustratingly early, I understand, but usually all the places are finalized and allocated by June, July. A lot of programs will close end of March. I know ours closes very early. A lot of information will be available on the Grad Australia website as well. So you'll find most companies, if not all, have a Grad Australia profile. I know Nova does. And all of our graduate information and work experience information ends up there as well. So it can be a fantastic resource to go to.
Yeah, awesome. I'll make sure to chuck in some important links when this podcast goes up. But I think that will conclude us for today. So thank you very much to both Josh and Emily for taking the time out of the day to have a chat with us. I think it was a lovely chat. I had a great time talking to you guys. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you for your time. It's not even recent memory. It's very, very near memory that I was on the other side of the table looking for graduate positions. It's still very fresh in my mind. So it feels really good to be able to describe my experiences, at least my path, which was very non-standard, but what is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's been great talking to you, Alan. And I think just kind of piggybacking off what Josh is saying, as you know, I'm sure a lot of people watching this podcast, probably aerospace students, and that's really cool. Don't feel like you've got to go straight into an aerospace centric role like you saw Josh Chevin's journey through that space and my journey through that space. Like you know, careers at this stage are really fluid, and there's so many different things that you can try out. So just don't pigeonhole yourself, I think, is my, I don't know, piece of advice. I don't know, just going to throw that in there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your experiences and your stories, I guess. So yeah, that will do it for the first episode of the speaker series of 2022. So thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.